Hello and welcome to the third in a series of four deep dives into our investigation into the Hisba Diwan, which is part of our work at the ISIS Prisons Museum, or IPM for short. We, that is me, Dagmar Hovestedt, a communicator for the Prisons Museum, and the moderator today with Omar Al-Assad, our head Arabic editor and senior writer, Robin Yassin Kassab, our head English editor and senior writer, and Hussam Hamoud, a Syrian journalist and analyst from Raqqa, who will join us today to discuss the investigations a bit later. Before we start to dive into the investigation, let me talk a little bit about the organization, the Prisons Museum. Let me introduce it to you. The Prisons Museum is a Syrian-led civil society organization. It began its work in 2017 when ISIS retreated from the territories it held in Syria and Iraq. The team then searched for colleagues detained by ISIS, looking for traces and evidence on the site the organization had used as prisons. From this first documentation effort, developed a methodology that cross-references multiple sources to reconstruct in 3D what happened under the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq. Our goal is to support accountability, justice, and memory efforts. The first project, the IPM website, was launched last fall in 2024. You're welcome to check the site, the isisprisons.museum website, ideally after our talk. And before we started the talk, a short hint to our next project, the Syria Prisons Museum. The end of the Assad dictatorship in December of 2024 now makes the investigations of crimes committed in its prisons possible, and we will launch this next project in September of this year. But now to our latest investigation at the ISIS Prisons Museum. If you, as the live audience, have a question, please ask it via the YouTube live chat section. Given the subject matter, we hope that you understand we'll monitor the questions a little bit. We will take in the end some 10 minutes to answer questions should there be one. But Omar, let's start with you. As part of the investigation, today we want to focus on surveillance as the driving force of ISIS rule. Maybe it might be good to remind our viewers briefly first why we chose a department within the ISIS structure rather than a site of crimes as the main topic of our investigation. So what is the Hisba Diwan and why did we decide to make it a focus?
So when we talk about Hisba Diwan inside ISIS, Hisba Diwan it's a structure to control the society under ISIS, and we can talk about the police of Hisba Diwan who moved in the souk and also in the public space in Raqqa, Deir ez-Zor, Al-Mosul, or another cities who controlled by Daesh between 2014 just to 2017. So Al-Hisba Diwan, this is the organization or the ministry, like a ministry in the modern rule, like the Ministry of Interior or a Ministry of Justice. We can see the police of the Islamic police of Al-Hisba Diwan, as I mentioned, who move in the public space to also make the observation of everything, and also to mention everything in the street, in the souk, and also in the hospitals, for example, and everywhere. And as you know, they have a lot of penalties against the people. For example, if anyone who smoke or he has for the hair, for the clothes, for everything in the daily life of the people who controlled of ISIS between 2014 just to 2017. So Al-Hisba Diwan is the Islamic police who control the daily life of the society under ISIS strict interpretation of Sharia.
Yeah. So in a way, to understand why there is a prison from this department, from the Hisba Diwan, you have to understand how they think and what they define as a crime, and that may be very regular behavior that was criminalized and then even punished by prison sentences. So we understand what happened in these prisons, right? We have 2 prison sites on the website that are related to the Hisba Diwan. You want to explain a little bit about the two sites that we chose?
Exactly. We have still enough. We have two prisons. The first one, Al Maidan prison in Al Mosul, which is a house from the old city of Al Mosul, which is turned as a prison. Between 2014, just at the end of 2017. And on the other hand, we have another prison, which is Muawiyah bin Abi Sufyan School. This is a huge school in the center of Raqqa city in Syria, and which was the central place for Al Hisba inside Raqqa.
Ah.
These two prison affiliated to Al Hisba Diwan, and also in this month we will publish another prison, which is Al Wadi. Al Wadi prison. This is a small prison inside the historical souk of Al Raqqa. And it's so important also to mention this prison because we can see how the Hisba police control everything and everywhere in the cities. So for that, they chose this place inside the historical souk of Araka.
So they had their eyes and ears
Yeah.
everywhere and also within the buildings in the center of town. So then, Robin, let's switch a little bit, take a step back and go into this idea of focusing on surveillance within Hisba Diwan and its work. What role does surveillance play when you want to observe how people behave? And how do you actually implement this idea within the ISIS rule?
I mean, it's the essence of the police state. You know, the walls have ears, and that kind of mentality, which has existed in different totalitarian or oppressive dictatorships around the world, whether they call themselves leftist or rightist or Islamist. They've used the same kind of technology of surveillance and or the human technology of surveillance, whatever actual, whether they've got high-tech listening devices or not, on the human level, people reporting what they see and hear is really important to these regimes. So ISIS, of course, just adapted what had gone before. You could say that the society was not unused to surveillance because in both Syria and Iraq, there were two Ba'athist dictatorships, the Saddam Hussein one in Iraq and the Assad regime one in Syria, which encouraged people to and pressured people to spy on each other. So that's well known that even if Syrians left the country, if they were students in America, for example, they would often be called in and put under pressure to spy on the other students and write reports. And everybody in Assad's Syria kind of knew that there must be somebody in the office who's writing a report. There must be some cab driver who you don't speak freely with the taxi drivers because they might try to lead you into saying something which they can then write in a report. And lots of people were on these payrolls. So when ISIS came in, it just tried to apply the same kind of idea, but maybe for a larger range of things. So
of so-called or quote unquote crimes, right? So
crimes and offenses and violations. So certainly they wanted the same kind of security information that the Ba'athist regimes wanted. They wanted to know who was coming and going in an area, who was spending money, who was making friends with a dangerous person, or they wanted to know this stuff. But ISIS took it much further, and they wanted to know if people were attending prayers or not, for example, in the mosque. And they turned the mosque imams into informers. The mosque imams were responsible, for example, of keeping a tally of which men came to the prayers at the mosque and which men didn't. And they were responsible for giving this information to the Hisba patrol when it arrived. If people were, this kept the terror in society. Maybe women did not want to cover their eyes most women in Raqqa didn't choose to cover their eyes, but this was ordered by the Hisba Diwan. Hussam has something to say. I'll shut up.
No. I was going to say, Hussam wants to add something to this observation or as part of the investigation. Go ahead, Hussam.
They didn't dare to, I'll just finish this sentence, they didn't dare to uncover their eyes, even if there wasn't a Hisba patrol coming, because somebody, one of the shopkeepers or taxi drivers may have been making a note of which woman was uncovering her eyes. Go on, Hussam, sorry.
Hussam, you're still muted.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. I just wanted something like what you said is quite interesting and quite true also. They start from the same mechanism that Assad and any other dictatorship was working on. But I think they took that kind of observing to another level because like now, even Assad, they were working on the ideas of nationality, of loyalty to the country, to the governor, to whoever. But I think they took it to another level. It's just like oppositing the God and what he says. So they were only based on that idea of loyalty and disloyalty. And they became themselves as the representatives of God. So it was easier for them and it was more worrying for people to opposite that. That encouraged a lot of people when you are just like talking about the idea of loyalty to God and to the group that serve God. It either revoke the family or the social connections or whatever, because you could save your brother from Assad. You shouldn't report your brother to Assad, but when it's a matter of God, especially with the ignorance and the low knowledge of people about Islam and everything, we are talking about like people who are not that deep inside Islam. They know just like the traditional one. So they cannot analyze all the orders of the thing. So when they came and they said that you should report your brother or your cousin or anyone of your family, basing on one of the ayat of Quran, for example, taking that example of Prophet Ibrahim when he was asked to kill his son. So that was a clear example that they used to convince people that you need to sacrifice anyone and to sacrifice like your people, your father, your family, just to serve the God, while in the meantime you were serving the organization, and they were rewarding people for this kind of sacrifice. So this took us as Raqqa people to another level of surveillance and also about observing and everything. I just want to add at this point. Thanks so much, Ruben, for mentioning that.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam, for just adding to the level, to the extreme to which this type of fealty to an idea was taken, and how surveillance and informing was just basically put on steroids. That's a little flippant way of saying this, but it seems to me like the most extreme form of how you make people cope and be integrated into a system like that. Robin, maybe we can continue a little bit on what we observed and presented on the website in the investigation about informants, how that would work. I'm happy to share the screen a little bit, but you can start describing a little bit how would they go about recruiting of informant. Did they just take over the taxi drivers that were working for Assad before?
I think a lot of people were pressured after arrest. You know, people were arrested for one thing, whatever it was. Maybe somebody was arrested for selling cigarettes, and then they gave them a choice. You know, either we can whip you and keep you in prison for a long time and confiscate all of your money and goods, or you can start working with us, and we let you go, and we likely whip you and then let you go, and you go out and report on other people selling tobacco and so on. That was one obvious way. People would be arrested for some offense or other and then pressured.
So coercion into collaboration, right?
Coercion
So into informing, yeah.
And then a lot of people were on payrolls. I mean, I think that a lot of people were paid for doing it. So they, for whatever reason, however they justified it to themselves, whether it was, as Hassan was suggesting, they were people who were actually convinced by, okay, this is what God wants me to do. This is what the religion is telling me to do. So therefore I'm morally right to write these reports about my neighbors, which are going to get them into trouble, or whether it was people were more honest with themselves and it was just that they needed to make some money, they needed to feed their children, they needed to stay alive. It will depend on person to person, but a lot of people were on payrolls and there were lists. We've got documents called Bayanat Rasid, which are the Rasid being the observer or the spy. The member of the public who is writing reports to ISIS, to the Hisba Diwan, and those people that we've got the lists of their names with their mother's names and their father's names and their place of birth and date of birth and their profession and all of this information about them, which obviously the Prisons Museum does not make public. That is one type of information which is obviously very sensitive, and we don't want to cause people even more trouble in places like Raqqa, which have been through so much trouble. These documents and many others which are controversial for various reasons are available on request to professionals and experts, legal teams, and so on, but they're not available to the general public.
Yeah, just as a means to understand the functioning, the coercion, how it actually works. And I could see that this type of collaboration is also a strategy of survival. Maybe you have an ailing family member, and by submitting yourself to these requests of collaboration, you at least feel that you're protected from further repression or even an assailant or something that happens to your loved one. I wanted to briefly point out that we do have actually two parts of an investigation on the website, right? So if you go to the Prison Museum investigations, then you find the part that actually has investigations, and this is the Hisba Diwan theory, structure, and procedures. So we covered some of that in our previous episodes, but the one that is relevant for today's discussion on surveillance and informant society is the Hisba Diwan's relationship with society. And here we have an actual set of documents that we also make available on the website, where we respect the privacy of people, so there's no personal information in there, but a lot of structural information and background information. And so when we look here, we do have documents concerning informers. And so this is not necessarily with examples of documents, but maybe we can go a little bit quickly through what we have listed here about informers.
Yeah, so this is examples of these Bayanat al-Rasid, the observer details, the Rossad, the observers or the spies, and these files which contain their personal information. And then we've got some analysis of reports and collaborators and complaints and so on. And I mean, it's interesting because it shows the very different kinds of people. There's a report there about this guy, Abul Mu'tasim, who submits audio recordings. It says they're a combined duration of 1 hour and 50 minutes, in which he's chatting with cigarette traders, with people who are trading cigarettes, which of course was completely against the ISIS law. And he's just chatting with them in a very relaxed way. And they obviously have no idea at all that he is recording the conversation, and that later on he's going to give the recording of the conversation to the Hisba Diwan, to the ISIS people. And the Prisons Museum discovered this audio recording amongst lots of audio tapes which were left by ISIS, in which some of them are interrogations. But these ones are recordings which have been made by members of the public who are informants and then have been given to ISIS.
So you think it's just their personal dedication to this type of betraying the trust of a fellow citizen through their own cell phones, or do you think ISIS instructed them and gave them
I think in different cases it would have been different things. I'm sure in some cases that ISIS would have told them that if you can get proof of these guys committing the crime of selling cigarettes, for example, please record it.
Yeah.
You know, that would have been probably, they would have been paid extra. You know, they would have certainly been, they would have known that that would have been welcome information.
Yeah. And they actually also, as you know, as the investigation shows from the analysis of the data, actually were employed as spies, in the sense that they had specific tasks to fill out and come back to ISIS and report on whether they have been able to fulfill their task.
Yeah. And some of it, of course, is just information which has been offered by people without being actual employees or without a payment. You know, people have come forward and often, in some cases, reported members of their own families. And in some cases, here it becomes a gray area, because some of it may be a bit like a domestic complaint, or you know, somebody in Scotland may be very upset about something that their son has done. So they go to the police station and complain about their son. And there is a case, for example, a domestic complaint where a father comes and says that his son has been abusive to him and the mother. So that's not exactly being an informer. It's more like so there's a gray area too of people
where just personal
information.
Or where personal issues, conflicts, you know, sometimes even jealousy or something of a neighbor is the driving force to go and say, hey, he did something wrong, just see him punished for very personal grievances, not necessarily for dedication. Yeah, definitely. I just shared one of the documents that has to do with that was a report written to the Hisba Diwan. Maybe, of course, this is translated from the English, but it has pretty much the original way of how it looked. Maybe we can go a little bit through this method of report submission, what this is. Would this be a person that has walked to an ISIS officer and said in the Hisba Diwan, here, I have this report, write this down, and then they would put it into this very formal report that looks like a form, as if they had, you know, thousands of empty forms that needed to be filled out. And so maybe explain a little bit about this document.
Well, they were very bureaucratic because of their pretensions to being a state. They wished to legitimize themselves through the bureaucracy of state. So everything that they could record in an official way, they did. And again, which is something that they inherited from the Ba'athist regimes to an extent. But yeah, this is a report, it says, directly from the informant, but the informant in this case seems to be just an ordinary ISIS member, and probably a foreigner, because his name is Abu Khalid al-Tunisi. And so that means the Tunisian. So he was probably some ISIS member that had come from Tunisia to join the organization. And so he is reporting here something in his own household. And clearly this is mixed up with the separate issue of ISIS taking Yazidi women and girls as war booty, or as captives, or basically as slaves and sex slaves, and forcing them to be sexual partners or to be maids in the houses of ISIS people. And he is talking in these terms, a female slave. And he later, I gave her to a brother. So this shows the way in which they were just handing Yazidi women and girls between themselves as if they were possessions. But here he is reporting that he suspects her of some kind of black magic or sorcery. You know, you can read the thing. I mean, I divorced my wife twice, and then I found a thread tied with knots, so she was making a spell. So this was to get some poor woman into trouble, or girl. I don't know what happened to the girl in question.
Yeah, so it has actually several aspects, right? So this is actually proof of slavery. This is proof of mishandling. This be, you know, in future legal context, the use of documentation of abuse, but it also shows the separation of people by their religion, and the idea that you could actually treat them like slaves, which is in and of itself also a crime. But I also find it interesting that they had a choice that you can make that is either directly from an informant via phone or social media, which these which indicates the heavy use of social media in which information is being traded, or through an apprehended individual. So this is sort of a form that probably was the first intake form for a report by an informant. So anything that we have in the investigation that that we think is very important to know about this idea of surveillance in society? I mean, it was a first step, but it also is a quality step of turning the rule of ISIS into much more of a totalitarian than just an authoritarian rule.
I don't know if it's just me, but I think that your mic is going
I
slightly.
can't hear you, yeah, very well.
Oh, okay.
Me
Yeah.
too, yeah.
Yeah, your mic is slightly going, but I did hear what you. Just, is there anything to add to that? I think there is, that when a society knows that there are informers, that there is surveillance going on all the time, and you don't know always. Sometimes you've got a good idea that guy is writing reports, but sometimes you just have no idea, and that creates a general sense of fear and distrust. And in society, it makes it almost impossible to organize with other people, to do any kind of opposition, even to talk honestly with people. It creates a society in which people are terrified of each other and don't trust each other. It breaks the social connections between people. And I think that's one of the aspects about these kinds of political authoritarian systems, which is so damaging, which does so much damage to society. And it's one of the reasons why society then retreats into other kinds of groups, whether it's tribes or sects, or they try to imagine that I'm safe with one group because they don't, because in general, people are taught not to trust each other. And it's the ramifications of this kind of secret police work and in its surveillance society are terrible. And it's a lesson that we should learn in the West now that we've got much more surveillance everywhere, electronic surveillance, that we need to be able to have a public space in which we can feel free and trust each other.
Yeah. Let me turn to Hussam now, because Hussam is from Raqqa, a site of the prisons and also a site of our investigations. Hussam, tell us a little bit about what happened, or what was your situation at the time the ISIS came, and we already know you were able to escape from the city, but how did you observe it from outside, and what was, if any, your re-encounter with the city and its people after ISIS left?
Yeah, actually, like to start with what happened in January 2014, when I just like start to take control of the city, and what happened inside the community itself. Because like let me just like describe the battle that happened there for like 13 days, and like it was so obvious for the first 10 days or 9 days that the armed groups that against opposing ISIS control were making some victory in the ground actually, and they were about to control the whole city. But what happened actually, that people were afraid of fighting ISIS, especially like the armed group in Deir ez-Zor and Al-Hasaka, who opened the way to all the patrols and convoys from ISIS to come from Iraq to arrive to Raqqa. This changed the whole battle. This is the first level of what we are saying, that main point of ISIS, that you need to fear us, not fearing breaking the rules. So once you are planting this idea in the people, even if they're armed or something like this, they would prefer always to keep themselves out of the line. This was the main thing that changed the whole history of Raqqa in 2014. And personally, like the main issue when they started, no one in 2013, when they started, no one give them the attention, the required attention to fight this ideology. So what happened, that everyone was just like denying the danger that they were making inside Raqqa. Everyone just like decided to consider them as another armed group that it was so normally to raise inside a city that that was the first city out of Assad control. Some people decided to see the danger. And we know a lot of friends who were assassinated and they were killed. They disappeared just because they took that decision. And that was the first layer of just like silencing people. And as Robin mentioned, to control the society, to break any terms inside the society. Personally, like the main reason that I was leaving Raqqa with the first day that they controlled the city, it was a cousin actually like who was working with them, and it happened in 2013 that we discussed the danger and also the wrong ideology that ISIS is carrying. And this guy like just like decided to be in the ranks of ISIS. And as I mentioned before, since the best way to show that you are loyal to the group, to sacrifice whatever means something for you. So that guy was just like deciding that don't think that we forgot about you. We know that we were talking what we were talking or something like this, and it was a clear sign for me just like to leave the city with the start of it. Not as many other friends and people because like it was the mess. A lot of people they just like decide to go to Turkey. For me, I decided just like to go to the east of the country, to Hasaka, to Deir, where I witnessed actually like ISIS and that bit like a lot of heavy carrying on anyone back because like each time that people are losing an area, you feel that you carry the responsibility of every single person that you let behind because they will. That was just like a discussion that I still remember with some armed groups of Al-Hasaka and Deir ez-Zor, and they were just like, if ISIS took control of Raqqa, it's not because ISIS is war, it's your fault. You should stand on your responsibility. You were the one who let ISIS take control because you were just saying that it's an internal issue. And what happened there in that meeting, that some of the leaders, the armed leaders who are supposed to be against ISIS, they went and informed that there is someone, a young guy, they informed the Wali of Al-Hasaka, Abu Usama, that there is someone just like trying to talk like in a bad way against your project, and no, we are brothers. We don't want the same thing that happened in Raqqa to happen to us. Because they were afraid of losing the power that they gained just in a military way. Like they couldn't. This is another option that they couldn't provide a successful project for the people to support. So when ISIS came, just like telling people that we are representing the God, we are coming here to advocate for the God. Like one of the examples when they took control of Ash-Shaddadi. Ash-Shaddadi is one of the biggest areas what was for the opposition in countryside of Hasaka. You would be surprised that ISIS actually, when they sized the camp for the other groups, they made 130 new members inside the group, joined them by providing them mobile phones. This is nothing about the religion, but they knew how to make the people believe in them. And people were just like so simple to know what's wrong and what's right.
Omar had a quick
sure.
No,
remark to this.
yeah, first of all, I'm totally agree with Hussam, and also if I can add something, when we talk about the context of the control of ISIS in Raqqa, for example, in March 2013, the Syrian regime retired his forces from Raqqa, and many of militia and also Islamic group who arrived, and between them we have ISIS. It was not the only organization who arrived to Raqqa. We can mention Jabhat al-Nusra, the front of al-Nusra, and also Ahrar al-Sham. On the other hand, we have a lot of armed group who is not Islamic with the Free Syrian Army in this in that year, but between March 2013 to October 2013, we have a lot of conflict. But in October, we observe this how the society and also how ISIS turned the page with another armed group, and they started this conflict which will continue to the January 2014, and in the first of this year in 2014, ISIS controlled totally Raqqa, and all the other Islamic group or another group also armed group, they go out in Aleppo or in Idlib or in another area.
So they had to submit or leave, right?
Exactly.
So Hussam, when you said that it wasn't only religion that made people join or support, but they were very skilled at finding out what people need. Do you think they had an idea and had studied Raqqa and Syria or Iraq, the territories they occupied beforehand, so they knew how to persuade people in the many different ways? Because you need to know that people want cell phones over anything else to make them join your group, right? So is there intelligence that was available to them or that they had gathered in the years previously?
My last think that this kind of communities are way simpler than being studied to be controlled.
Okay.
Like this kind of community is the same thing like when I was talking about like Iranians, how they controlled inside the city. Just like you are entering like a city that people there almost have nothing. So whatever you are providing, they don't care. This is the mentality of the thing, and this is the mentality that let Assad controlled for like more than half a century. That since you are providing food to the people doesn't care who provide them food. So they were just like pushing whatever idea of the thing, and especially like if they see that there's a kind of extension between their culture and the culture of the area. And especially if we're talking about like the eastern cities of Syria. So it's a special case because they are the only cities that four different governance style were able to survive there and to make achievements. So like we have the Assad regime who was able to control everything, and then we have the Free Syrian Army, even for a short period, that they were able to gather the people, creating civil society or like civil front for them. Then you have the ISIS, which is like the oppositing of the two, and they were able to create the like something to represent the community. And now you have like the SDF militia, which is like the opposite of all the thought. So you can see like there's difference between the thing. So I don't think or I don't analyze that really it took them a lot of effort to convince the people.
Yeah, so there were just opportunities, and the people have
Exactly.
had so much change and so much change that was ill-willed towards them that in the end it was just a matter of survival, and so
Yeah.
that's how it goes. Yeah.
And
And
I
go ahead.
always like to describe like the thing that it's way simpler than whatever we are describing. So like personally, I experienced like being in jail of ISIS and Deir ez-Zor like for over 30 years. So like the first thing that you are imagining when ISIS is capturing someone who is oppositing them, and they were capturing him for the oppositing of them, that they will try to convince or to explain religiously why it was wrong to visiting them. You will be surprised that we didn't saw any Shari or any Imam for over 30 days till the day before the prisoners exchange happened. And when the Imam or the Shari, the Sheikh, came, he was talking about why you need to give al-bay'ah to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He didn't talk about like why to believe in ISIS. He was just like, this is the main point. There is like a kind of like a new president or wali. Why you need to follow us?
Yeah, yeah.
So like I feel like it's way
It's very clear.
simpler than
It's very clear. You break any previous allegiances, and then you
Yep.
come in, you give them advantages of this, and then you pledge allegiance to the one person, and then that's how this continues, right? So when you were outside, and then we'll open it up to a broader discussion again, but when you're outside during ISIS rule, were you able to have any contact with people that were in Raqqa, or was that completely impossible?
I still remember like a call with my brother who is a doctor and he was in Raqqa, and like the longest call it lasted for less than a minute, and he was just like I was just like calling him after I get out from the jail because like my family thought that I was killed somewhere. So I was just like calling him, and he was just like, I need to know just one thing. Don't tell me more because in case they will question me, I will say that I know nothing. Just like, are you fine or not? That was the communication with people.
Wow.
Are you fine? Are you alive or not? That's the thing. Don't tell me any details because anyone could be questioned, and you don't know like whatever it will happen, how they will be arrested. Because like this, that was the main thing about Al-Hisba. Talk about them again. That it could start with being arrested for smoking a cigarette secretly, and it could end by being beheaded for being like a spy for the coalition. It could be like between two of them, and it always depends. Yeah, they had like kind of like Islamic law to implement, but like it was more depending on the ideology of the individual member that it's arresting you. So the member will just like decide if the fine or the punishment for the cigarette would it be just like verbal, or it could be like being in jail and being forgotten. And there were many cases for amirs or leaders who were entering the jail of Point 11 or like any other jails, and they were questioning just like prisoners, why you are here? And always they were releasing people within the same day after checking them, because they just figure out that the Hisba member put someone in jail without the need to put them in jail.
Yeah. Complete arbitrariness, right? So, Omar, you raised your hand. You
Yeah,
wanted
if I can add something here in this point about the communication with the other people or with the people who live in another area, we observe a lot of case of when ISIS member arrested a lot of people because they communicate with their family or their relative who lives, for example, in the zone controlled from Syrian regime or from Iraqi government, or who live in Turkey or Europe. And also, I can mention something. They didn't arrest them in Al-Hisba prisons. They arrested them in the security prisons because for ISIS member, this is a security case when someone communicate with another one who lives in another area, which is also Ard al-Kuffar in their ideology also.
Yeah, it's like a foreign enemy contact, so that type of breach.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's probably a harder question, but also, Robin, you started introducing this thought already. So there was 3 years of rule of ISIS. Eventually, they get driven out. And what they started, especially with the Hisba Diwan and this extreme form of Sharia law, was it effective? Or did people basically just say, thank God it's over, and it all went back to whatever a normal could be?
Oh, you're asking about the aftermath of ISIS
Yes,
now?
I'm talking about the aftermath, right? So what is left? Did it change the people? Did it change the city? That may be a question for Hussam.
I think that's a better question for Hussam, who knows Raqqa far better than I do. But I mean, obviously, the city was completely ruined by the effort to get rid of ISIS. In order and Mosul and in Iraq. And many other towns throughout Syria and Iraq where ISIS was in control. The necessary battle to get rid of them was fought in such a way that the whole city was destroyed. That huge amounts of the city were destroyed, and most of the population had to go and live somewhere else, and so on. So it's very difficult. I don't think it succeeded, obviously not, in creating the kind of society that they wanted to create, but it created a lot more trauma. If there's a positive outcome, it's that the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who are also, the governing militia at the moment in Syria, the people who are in the key security positions, the transitional president, the interior minister, the defense minister, these people are from this other jihadi militia, which also has roots in the Islamic State of Iraq, Al-Qaeda in Iraq, organizations like that. I suppose that to the extent that its social policies so far are much more intelligent than ISIS, that's probably because they learned an important lesson in their battles with ISIS and in their war with ISIS, and the clear split that happened between them and ISIS. they also learnt that when you do that kind of Hisba Diwan, when you try to force people, even societies which are already in some cases conservative Muslim societies, and you try to force them into behaving in a certain way, it backfires. It means that society doesn't accept you, it doesn't like you, and that it's very easy for other people to get rid of you.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that at the moment they're not trying to, they're doing other things which are terrible for the future of Syria's unity in various other ways. But in this field, at the moment, they're not trying to force women to wear head coverings or eye coverings. They're not trying to ban cigarettes and so on, because they know that there would be a huge backlash against them. So maybe the positive experience of the ISIS Hisba Diwan is that the other jihadi and Islamist groups who are currently in power have learnt that they can't enforce that kind of thing on society in such a crude way. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, if you want to look for the silver lining in such circumstances. But Hussam, let me get back to the point, what the citizens, the people of Raqqa, who have never asked to be ruled by ISIS, had to be subdued by this type of authoritarian regime that really endangered every person in their everyday life without any intention to do harm. They were criminalized. So is there, next to the physical destruction of the city, but I'm much more interested in also the mental idea, the cohesiveness of the city and being a citizen of Raqqa. How did they cope, and is there a lasting legacy of that or effect?
Yeah, actually, like if I want to talk about like the society itself and the community itself inside Raqqa, we need to mention something that it's just like being missing a lot in this narrative. ISIS didn't bring anything new to start from. They just start from the old norms that were exist in the community and try to modify them to serve their Islam, even if it was oppositing Islam, by the way. Like this is one example, just like when Prophet Muhammad was asked about like tribes or something like this. It was just like saying that it's disgusting. It was like this. What ISIS did when they control Raqqa, they did a council of tribes there. Despite like it's against the core of Islam, and it was a direct message. But they were just like taking these tribes that as community that based a lot in tribes and believing a lot. So like we are taking just like some sheikhs or some leaders from the tribes inside the city, even if they are not the well-known ones. You are just like bringing someone, you are giving them power. You are giving them money. You are giving them the power to release someone. So like people from this tribe start to believe in this tribe, and this tribe leader will be the messenger of whatever ISIS want to control the tribe. So they took something like really social, and they convert it to something starve the ideology of ISIS. In this way, when you see that as much as you are closer to ISIS, as much as you have power, it's not only about ideology, it's not about the money, it's about power. It was the whole story, even within ISIS and within Assad, with the parliament and everything. Like people, when they went to the parliament to be parliament members, they weren't going there for like representing the people. They were going there just like to have power. This exact thing happened with ISIS. So as much as you are showing loyalty, as much as you are serving the narratives, informing about someone, trying to pick the tribe, as much as the leaders of ISIS will trust you, will give you more power. So like you will be more respected. And this like affected the main structure of the community, especially with changing the stakeholders of the community. So like the
You
tribes,
co-opt
if you
them,
understand,
you co-opt them, you make them collaborators in supporting
exactly.
the system.
Exactly. The funny thing, the biggest tribe in Raqqa within 2014, just like to adapt to the situation, they had three sheikhs, three leaders, one in Turkey with the opposition, one with ISIS, and one in Damascus with the Assad. So like those three main factors, just like you are destroying the main structure of the community, you are just like destroying it, and now the whole narrative is about the power, how you get the access. So yeah, it's not something new, but they knew how to adapt it inside the situation.
So what happened after ISIS? So all these compromise were made, all these alignments were made. Many people tried to just survive, try to make it under the radar, or made some daily compromises just to save their families. So is it disappeared, or is there still some allegiance to it, or is it really just in that sense gone and
No, actually, like the continuum of this story that now we are talking about like a new militia that the core of it is counterterrorism, as counter ISIS. And now I can find you at least 10 examples of ISIS leaders who were promoted as tribes leaders within ISIS, and they had videos and photos with ISIS leaders like wanted terrorists. Now they are sitting with Madloum Abdi and SDF, and they are presenting SDF, the same leaders that are presenting SDF in front of the community. So like we are talking about something in the core of counterterrorism programs.
Mm.
And now I just like want to follow the whole thing. No, if someone isn't like benefit, and when I'm saying that it's benefit to jail them, I mean the foreign fighters who are their countries pay money to keep them in Syria. If they don't bring benefits to SDF, you want to go observe the situation, especially in Deir ez-Zor right now. There's a daily assassination operations is happening by ISIS. So what happened with the people who were operators inside ISIS? They are still active. But like we want to believe that ISIS just like vanished in 2019, and again we need to reconsider what's the idea of defeat such organization, because this organization, it was their biggest mistake to be a target on the ground. They don't need to be a target. Now they get back to the main core of them. They get back as just like spreading terror in the mind of people, and this is the existence of them. It's not controlling Raqqa, it's not controlling Deir ez-Zor, it's not controlling Mosul, because like they tried that kind of ideology, and they saw for 3 years or for almost 4 years that it was easier to target them when they are present on the ground. So now they just like step back in their presence by just like making what they are so good in, targeting people and making them afraid, as just like Al-Hisba was just like about like fearing them, not fearing the rules. So they get back to their strength point, unfortunately, with the same operators.
So that basically means, I mean, I don't know if Robin and Omar want to share from the investigation, but it means that in a way they were quite effective with transferring the ideology, and be it just through fear. And fear is hard to control because it's in your head, right? So once you install the fear in your head, there's no rule or law that can get it out of there. And so if their presence is being felt, and especially if there's a continuation in the personnel, even in other contexts, then for people, it's very much still present.
And I think that I just wanted to add to what Hussam had said before, that I completely agree with him that it's when people in a community have very, very little, then it's very easy to get their loyalty if you offer them something, even if it's just basic food rations, you know, so I agree with that completely. But at the same time, before ISIS took over in Syria, I think, is it the Christoph Reuter documents, he worked out that this Haj Bakr guy, is he called Haj Bakr, had been sent by Baghdadi to Syria, and he'd arrived first, and he had done real police work, mukhabarat work, and he had worked out in not just in big cities like Raqqa or big places like Raqqa, but even in little villages. Who are the people in this village who will oppose us? Like when we come in and we say we'll give you some mobile phones, we'll give you some wheat, who's the guy that will be a counter pole? He will say, wait a minute, don't trust these guys. Who will be the people that could potentially have some authority or be respected in the community, and his word might go against our word and he might cause us trouble? And those people they assassinated. You know, they definitely did. It was as on the one hand, there was giving the poor people the basics to make them loyal, but that had to be backed up with working out who are the people in society that could stand up and present a different narrative, and killing those people or terrorizing them so they leave. And then even when they did leave, you know, like a guy called Neji Jarif comes to mind, who was in Gaziantep, a guy from Raqqa, but he was in Gaziantep, he'd left. But then one day somebody just came up to him at the front of his house and shot him in the head. And so when that kind of terror was also necessary in order to rule, to create a rule of fear so that people didn't dare to take any action or to speak up.
And what you're saying, Robin, is that that type of intelligence of who were community leaders, who were outspoken leaders, being in the way of ISIS, that was shared with the Mukhabarat in Syria and they got information from them, or how would they have that information?
I don't know. Hossam is better at answering that question to me. I'm sure at some levels that ISIS was penetrated and there were communications between, we know for sure from Christoph Reuter that there were relations between Assad and the Islamic State in Iraq going back to when they were fighting the Americans. So I don't think it's controversial to say that in some cases there was collaboration between them, or they were spying on each other in a fruitful way.
And it was in the interest of the Assyrian Mukhabarat to help ISIS.
Not only that, I think we have to think all the time that the main founder of ISIS, sometimes they come from Iraqi regime. Also, the officers and the general from the ex military in Iraq, and this is so important also when we can observe also this military mentality inside the organization. This is so important when we can observe that in their work, and also how they control the society and how they treat the other people. And they a lot of Saddam Hussein army generals, they meet the Islamic detention inside the prisons, and they have this relation. So this is so important also to mention that when we talk about the first moment of ISIS between 2006 and 2008.
Mm. And I think that is something that is often really not mostly ignored, because it feels like out of nowhere there's this ISIS and now they're gone. So it's all done with, right? So it's a very compact, tidy story if you're not really looking close enough. But I think nothing comes out of nowhere. There's always a history. There's always a formation of something, and there's learning. There's a lot of knowledge exchange between the different forms of repression. And on both sides, Iraq and Syria, there have been long decades of repression. And that's what you learn and what you look at. Hussam.
Exactly. Just like there's also like another narrative is being like mistakenly separating that Assad regime was the one who created ISIS. It didn't happen like this. It didn't happen like this. But like if we are just like remarking like one thing, like what happened in 2012 when Assad regime just like decided to release all the Islamist prisoners from Sydney. Assad regime or the intelligence or the Mukhabarat, they didn't ask those Islamists to go and create Islamic states or Islamic emirates, but like they were aware exactly, but like how they will behave when they are going out. So they release them betting on this. They will go out. They will be respected emirs. They will create their dreams, and that's why Assad regime was opening the way to advocacy, to learn Salavism and everything, even inside the jail. They were preparing them, like they didn't ask them, but like just release them, and you would know like where they will be heading. That's the thing. So yeah, they were participating in this, like as Assad regime, but not directly. We cannot just like accuse everyone that this like a project was made by the Assad regime. But yeah, like it was facilitated in the way, like for example, like Assad regime and ISIS, they just like decided that the common enemy is the FSA. So like they were fighting together for like 2 years. They didn't make any battles against each other.
Yeah.
So like they had like common interests that the ground with them.
If I can add something here,
Yes,
when we talk about the prison of Sinai, for example, and the radical Islamic who liberated from this prison, we can mention Abu Luqman, who was the famous emir or prince of Daesh in Syria, who come from Sinai also. And I can't say the Syrian regime liberate Abu Luqman to be a member of Daesh, but Abu Luqman, who was a radical Islamic inside Sinai, he joined the Daesh directly when he was liberated.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. Thank you three for covered a lot of ground from our investigations into a little bit of a history before and after. That was quite fascinating. Thank you very much. Tomorrow we will continue this conversation in Arabic. Noor Abu Faraj, my colleague, will welcome then Omar Al-Assad and Hussam Jasmati for the Arabic version of this discussion on surveillance and the legacy of ISIS in terms of surveillance. But this will be on the Facebook page of the ISIS Prisons Museum. So find us on the Facebook page for tomorrow's discussion in Arabic, if you understand. And our final talk in the series will be Wednesdays in English, Thursdays in Arabic at the end of the month, August 27 and 28. And we will continue what we started talking about, the legacy of ISIS for Syria today. So if you're interested, we're very happy if you can join us or look at us after we're done with this. Thank you for your interest and see you again. And check out the ISIS Prisons Museum website. Bye. Thank you.